Right. Right.
And narcotics, drugs, fentanyl was the best way to get somebody locked up. Now, and Chief, I don't want to go down this road, but when we
Sure.
talk about the drug dealers and you talk about how many people we have locked up
Sure.
for having minimal amounts of narcotics versus the other side who can have a whole pound and do 6 months probation. I think back to teaching our children, we have to understand that this system, if you look at just the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, this system needs people in jail. And one sure way of getting them locked up is through them using drugs. You would use drugs.
Exactly right.
Happening here in Prince George's County now, and I've been saying to the state's attorney, it's no doubt in my mind, this is a drug issue that we're dealing with. Last thing is this. It confuses me that while the federal government wants to put a lot of money into this opiate thing, but at the same time, the federal government is struggling to pass legislation that makes weed legal.
Wow. Good point.
Isn't that kind of counterproductive? Because if I can get a child hooked on weed, it is just, it's pretty clear. You're going to be able, we've always talked about weed as being that first step. So how do you legalize that one drug that's going to sure as hell take them to the next level? That's a problem. But I'm not going to top the line and just leave it and see what happens.
Well, once again, you made about 10 good points now that I talked about, and I agree with everything you said. When it comes to, you're absolutely right. Weed is what they consider to be a gateway drug, if you believe in that phenomenon. Weed is one of the gateway drugs. But once again, opiates have become a gateway drug. But when it comes to marijuana, my experience with the government is this. Marijuana was placed in Schedule 1, which means it's a drug federally that has no medicinal value, high potential for addiction and abuse. That was done back in 1970 with the Controlled Substance Act. 1970. This is 2019. So with my experience with the government is that once they make a decision about something, they don't like to backtrack. They don't like to admit that they've made a mistake. They don't like to admit the fact that when black men smoke weed, they're not going to want to have sex with white. They don't want to admit that when they're wrong. I believe that maybe soon marijuana will be taken out of Schedule 1, put into Schedule 2, and be allowed to be used as a medication. I do believe that. I never thought I'd see that day, but I think it is going to come. But you're absolutely right. They want to continue to vilify weed because, like you just said, how easy is it for a police officer to pull over a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, get a felony on that kid's record? Now, all of a sudden, that kid with the felony can no longer compete with his child for a job. Right.
That's right.
And Chief, you know this.
Sure. Sure.
I've got young people who would like to become police officers.
Sure.
But I know it's not going to happen because you've been picked up for smoking weed. Well, they told him it was legal and he could smoke it.
That's right.
But now you
Right.
only won't get that job, but the other jobs, it's legal to smoke weed, but when you go to McDonald's and apply for that job and they tell you to take a urine test, you're out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and well, I truly believe education is the key component. I call it demand reduction prevention work. I think that is the key component. Fortunately, a lot of schools have bought into this and include substance abuse discussions or lesson plans in their health classes. A lot of schools I've been to have incorporated this, and I think it's a very good thing. But just like last night, I had a college class, and I told this one girl in my class, I said, I can look at you and tell you smoke weed. I can look in your eyes. I can look at your whole persona and tell. And she said, Professor Adkins, you're right. I said, what? And then she talked about how wrong it was, et cetera, et cetera. But what she didn't realize is what I saw. An alcoholic doesn't think anybody sees they're an alcoholic. They don't think that they don't realize how they look. And you know what she told me? She said, I smoke it with my father.
Oh, yes. Listen, I've had hearing it, and with the mother saying, I didn't know he was doing that, and the child turned to look at the mother and said, Mom, that's not true. Y'all sit downstairs in the kitchen and smoke weed all the time. It's
Right.
ignorance. It's the ignorance that we have to deal with, and that ignorance is not reserved just for our children. It's not.
But you have to look at the parents today. Look at the generation these parents come from. These parents aren't my age and your age. These parents come from what generation? They were born what, in the 80s? You know, and look at.
28 years ago, talking about the baby.
Mhm.
I've got mothers now that are 30 years old with 16, 17-year-old children. So this is something that the parents are still growing with, and the children grow right into it. It is a problem. The ignorance, and this is a
Right.
part of the problem. See, we as a people, we don't want to look at each other and say, what you're doing is really an ignorant thing. We don't want to do that.
That's right.
We want to turn our heads and say, oh, well, it's just them. But as I said to the chief earlier, as with this opiate thing, I saw the same thing with heroin. I saw it with cocaine. Nobody's
Right.
really giving it a lot of attention until it started affecting the other children.
Right. Methamphetamine. Right.
Let's do a whole lot of talking about it. Oh, now this is really ridiculous. This is
Right.
our problem. And when I come on this show, I keep saying the same thing to people. We got to stop waiting for American society to solve our problems. And this is a big problem. I'm seeing children now 11, 12 years old. I've got a case coming in next week where the boy is 10 years old, used his parents' credit card, got $50. He didn't sell it because he wanted to start selling weed, so he had to buy the weed. It is a big problem that in our communities, again, we don't want to talk about it. And that's what
Right.
society wants us to do, is not talk about it. We've got to stop it. I didn't come on to take up all the time, and I want to finish listening to you, Professor Adkins. So, Chief, I'm going to finish listening to him, and I'll be back with you next week.
Yes, sir. And
Man, I really appreciate your points, man. Every point you made was a fantastic point, and I really appreciate you bringing it on. I really appreciate the good work that you're doing, and I hope you continue to do it, because once again, like you said, our children are being fed a bunch of bull crap, and unfortunately, it's coming from a lot of their parents. Okay, and now with all of these states that are legalizing weed and decriminalizing weed and all this CBD oil out there the kids are going to start to get the perception that it's okay.
well, you both brought up some great points, and the key component, and I agree with both you and Mr. Lee, is there has to be a strong educational component. You can put all kinds of laws on the books. You can have all kinds of booklets and pamphlets and movies. But if community members are not talking to their kids or their adults or their struggling parents, this is what you're going to have. One of the issues, and I know we've kind of gotten off the opioid thing very briefly.
Right.
But one of the challenges that you're having, and this is some of the discussions that I've been having with some of my friends in law enforcement, is, okay, so now that it's legal to smoke weed in, Nevada and Maryland and other places. Okay. So has that expectation caught up with the job market? So, for example, if I'm going to apply for the Homeland Security and Criminal Justice Institute Police Department, and I've been going to Arnold's weed factory and buy my weed, legally, and I'm transporting it as the law says I can, and I'm smoking it where the law says I can. Well, now that I am doing this, but when I go to apply for that job with NIH or with NIA or any other acronym, DEA, ATF, now it's like, you have the degree, you have the people saying good things about you, but you're smoking weed, son. And
Right.
I don't think it's caught
and
up.
Your
Right.
And your application is going to go straight in the shredder.
Absolutely.
And they're not going to tell you why. They're not going to tell you why. They're going to say thank you, but no thank you.
Right.
Your application is going to go straight in the shredder.
That's exactly right. And of course, I had personnel under my command when I was a deputy for a few minutes. And, there are those standards of marijuana usage that each agency obtains and maintains.
Right.
But, that's going to have to be something that all agencies across the country are looking at. And McDonald's, like Mr. Lee said, and all the other Home Depot, all the other places that test you for marijuana. Because, now people are like, well, I think what I'm going to do, the Super Bowl's coming on. I think I'm going to get some weed and a 6-pack and some sandwiches, and I'm really going to enjoy the game.
Right.
Now, according to that jurisdiction, as long as I'm buying it from Arnold's Weed Shop, which is a legal dealer, and you met all those qualifications, and I'm doing all the things that municipality says I can do. I can buy it. I have to keep it in the package. I can't transport it out and all these other things.
Yeah, but you have to have a medical license. You have to have a prescription to smoke that kind of weed.
Sure, you do.
Those people that buy that weed legally these people. Well, we know they are, but technically they're smoking it for medicinal purposes.
But they're still smoking.
And even if you are smoking it you're right. But there's a difference. But my point I'm trying to make is going back to your point.
Sure.
DEA, Walmart, they're not going to care whether you're smoking it for medicinal reasons or not.
That's right.
If you pop positive, you're fired.
That's right.
Now, you said you've experimented with it 10 years. And okay, we're going to give you the job, but we're here to tell you from this point on, you can't use weed. And if you pop positive, you're going to get fired.
That's correct.
Because that's the threshold. That's the line in the sand that we've drawn. And these young people need to know that.
Absolutely. And that gets right.
I make the analogy. Okay, yeah, weed is legal in D.C. Yeah, it's legal in D.C. and many other states, I think. But what if you found out this airline pilot that's flying our plane smoked weed last night because it's legal in the state that he smokes in? How would you feel about that?
That's correct. I just received another chat message based on your conversation, and there are certain communities where it doesn't matter what you have in your background. You're probably going to at least get consideration and possibly get into ROTC or that law enforcement job. Whereas other communities, you're probably going to get the lovely parting gifts. And, these are the things that have to be worked out because now when you look at most agencies that are having difficulties, for example, recruiting Hispanic members of the community or African Americans or other groups. And now when you put this into the mix on top of some of the other challenges that face certain communities, now I'm thinking that's really going to shrink that applicant pool. And that's something and that's what
they wanted to do. That's what they wanted to do. They want to preclude everybody that they can preclude, even if it means losing some of their own.
And that's a sad statement. And I hope that, as this thing evolves, because you know that marijuana is going to be legal across the country eventually. That's inevitable because now you even have guys like, John Boehner, the former Speaker of the House, who has a big job with the marijuana industry. So it's coming. There's too much money to be made, too much tax money to be made. It's coming. And the Fed's going to want to get their cut.
At the expense of what? Too much tax money to be made at the expense of what? At the expense of our children?
Yep.
Is that tax money worth it now? At the expense of our children's future? Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No. But you said it earlier. As long as the dollars are long and as long as there's money to be made, that's probably going to be the driving force between, maybe this isn't such a good idea for a 13-year-old to be smoking weed, out of an old, cigarette vending machine. But there's a lot of money to be made. So we're going to have to end it on that, Professor Adkins. But I certainly appreciate it. And on behalf of Thin Bad and Ambezi and the Straight No Chaser audience, we really appreciate you coming on today, because you really provided some valuable insight, along with, what are opioids, what is the symptomology of a person that may be addicted, and of course that insightful discussion about the community's role in terms of educating our members about staying away from not only from opioids, but some of the other challenging drugs that are in the community. So once again, Professor Adkins, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you being here. And any part